The world's largest exchange just did a major Bitcoin backflip, but is it because they know something to do with the United States policy? Of course, we are talking about CoinBase and their new commercial. But first, before I dive into it, let's take a look at what Coinbase just put out today.
If a Bitcoin was the size of a quarter, all 21 million of them would fit inside a single shipping container. But to fit the dollars the Fed prints on average every day, you'd need 72 shipping containers. Each year, you'd need 26,280 containers. And to fit what they've printed in the last decade, well, you'd need a lot more than that.
So Coinbase is going now all in on just Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. That is very interesting because their entire business model relies on you buying and selling Bitcoin and other cryptos. In fact, these other cryptos, they pay to get on Coinbase's services. But first, let's dive into just how big Coinbase is, because I want to tell you guys how significant this flip would be if Coinbase, instead of pushing ETH, ADA, all of these other shit coins onto their users, if every single one of their users just goes all in on Bitcoin, how much that could mean for Bitcoin. Now, let's look at their total assets under management. Coinbase is nearly $500 billion in assets. It says it holds 420 billion in assets, making it the 21st largest U.S. bank by total assets. And we scroll on down here, that in customer assets would make it its largest and the 8th largest brokerage by assets under management. So it's very, very interesting where we are having a lot of differences when it comes to whether or not Coinbase should be strictly regulated. Everybody knows that it's a giant and major SEC publicly traded company, but how is Coinbase looked at? Is it looked at as a brokerage, a bank? Really, it's hard to tell with everything here. But let's dive into the numbers, right? Coinbase doesn't disclose the exact volume of all of its customers here, but we can look at the transaction volume by coin, meaning the trading volume. We don't necessarily know how much of this are going in and out, or how much of their users are holding Bitcoin and other coins on their trading or on their platform. But we can look at the one thing, the numbers that they're reporting. Only a third of their overall assets under management is Bitcoin, or at least that's what we can assume here, is just about a third. So if Coinbase has $420 billion worth of assets here under management, that would make $286 billion worth of their total assets into other cryptos spread around all over the place. So if Coinbase were to now start saying, hey, users, just go all in on Bitcoin, we're in fact eliminating everything outside of just Bitcoin, that would be $268 billion worth of user money straight into Bitcoin, right? So that would be a major flip, and it would make the 21st largest bank now be strictly a Bitcoin holding company, right? So these orders of magnitude would be absolutely huge. And if you look at this too, right, there's 13% is USDT, which is essentially a stable coin. So you could have essentially just stable coins and Bitcoin all on this overall asset, right? So as I discussed here earlier, they don't publicly disclose a detailed breakdown of the exact distribution of coins under management, but they hold assets for a wide range of users. This number is a little bit later, or a little bit less, 90 billion less, but it supports over 240 digital assets and 300 trading pairs. So why, if they offer 400 all of these differences, why did they just talk about Bitcoin in this single video, in this commercial that they're playing in the United States and Canada? Well, it's because they know it's the only truly decentralized cryptocurrency. It's the only one with a fixed supply, and In fact, they know Coinbase is going to remain king. And I think the tie between Coinbase and the Bitcoin ETFs and the United States government is something that is not being talked about enough here, right? So they've done a strategic Bitcoin reserve and a US digital asset stockpile. But for those of you who remember, or maybe for those of you who don't, I'll refresh you guys here. In this breakdown, Donald Trump and the crypto czar David Sachs, the United States government, they said they will plan on not selling a single Bitcoin, finding tax efficient ways, meaning they're not going to use tax dollars to buy more Bitcoin, whether that's revaluing the gold, doing all these different kinds of ways to now potentially have Bitcoin on the balance sheet without spending taxpayer dollars. But they would be willing to sell these other cryptos. They don't want to sell anything else. For now, they're going to hold on to their XRPs, their ETH, and everything else. But immediately off the jump, they are not selling Bitcoin. And that's the one that they plan to never sell, is their Bitcoin. So is this the reasoning why Coinbase is now making a flip on just Bitcoin and Bitcoin only? Because we know Trump and Brian Armstrong and Baldilocks, as many people like to call him, Trump and Baldilocks met not too long ago, where he's met with the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, who in fact is custody for 9 of the 13 Bitcoin ETFs in the United States. So it's a major custodian. It's holding Bitcoin for many different constituents, including Strategy B. And with all of that, Baldilocks meeting with Donnie T, the Orange Man, the duo is expected to discuss personal appointments for his second administration. The meeting would mark the first time they have met since Election Day and comes as Trump continues to fill out his cabinets of senior. So Trump, formerly a crypto skeptic, has turned into a vocal leader in there. But I think it's interesting that Coinbase is making this flip. They've been somewhat involved with nefarious activities, like their CFO getting fired for insider trading as new coins got dumped onto their exchange. And on top of this, they are, like I said a little bit earlier, the custodians for 9 of the 13 Bitcoin ETFs. And they've been amongst a bunch of other rumors of having a major paper Bitcoin attack. So for those of you guys that have been knowing and following the channel, you guys know I've been covering the fact that Coinbase might be selling paper Bitcoin for quite some time because we see so much of this buying from the ETFs, but the price hasn't necessarily budged just too much. And we just saw this not too long ago, where BlackRock is now diversifying out of Coinbase as a custodian for their Bitcoin ETF. And they chose this company called Anchorage. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've been in the Bitcoin space for almost 8 years now, and I have never heard of Anchorage. Now, why would BlackRock, the biggest money manager in the world, trust a nobody? It must be because, one, they want to diversify. Sure, you can make that argument for me. Everybody should diversify when you're holding massive amounts of money. I fully believe that. Like BlackRock, you know what? If you want to trust your Bitcoin with BlackRock, I would feel better if they had multiple custodians opposed to just relying on one, because that leaves a huge single point of failure. Okay, sure, you got me there. But why aren't you using somebody like Fidelity? Why aren't you using somebody that has been proven and in fact has other Bitcoin ETFs? Well, they're not doing that. They're picking this company called Anchorage to get farther away from Coinbase. So I think it's very, very peculiar here when we are seeing this, right? We are seeing a lot of writing on the wall. And in fact, we are seeing BlackRock and Coinbase potentially having this paper Bitcoin attack. And I've covered this multiple times, brought up this very article to you guys. When I think there is smoke, there is fire with all of this, right? Especially in this industry. When you usually hear about something sketchy going on, It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Why would Coinbase and Brian Armstrong even acknowledge this? BlackRock and Coinbase have been potentially issuing these IOUs or paper Bitcoins, right? Their critics have been saying that. Brian Armstrong acknowledged this. Why would you acknowledge something if there's not a small percent chance of this being true? We saw this with FTX not too long ago. FTX was saying essentially, hey, we are perfectly fine with this, boss. Like, we do not think this is an issue, right? Sam Bankman-Fried was like, trust me, bro. And what did Brian Armstrong say? Literally the same exact thing. Trust me, bro. So are we trusting them? I don't trust them. Call me Future and Metro Boomin because we still don't trust you. You should not be trusting any of these big guys because they have been essentially just keeping the rich richer and keeping the poor poorer all of this time, right? And it's funny. We got Beachy in the chat asking why Bitcoin is crashing. My brother in Christ, if we are crashing down to 94K, I don't think that's too bad. Paper Bitcoin is just counterfeiting. That's why I think we should watch out for all of these big players. Chip is saying, hey, we should need to bash Arizona's radical liberal government, Katie Hobbs, for vetoing the SBR bill. That's for a state-specific bill. And to be honest, I am not surprised we are seeing some of the opposition start to come towards, opposing these Bitcoin bills. I think that that's going to continue to happen, right? I mean, we've been seeing Pocahontas coming at us heavy for years on end. And then we got TF says, I think Coinbase has been in the business long enough to know BTC is the best, but they do gambling businesses because they earn fees. They don't lose money by letting people gamble. Exactly for that. Stay humble and stack sats. As everybody in the chat, we got McLevin, Knox, Bill. We got everybody in there. And I agree. Is it crashing here? I don't really think so. But in the fact that people might think it's crashing, I've got some great things for you. I will give you guys some potentially life-changing money. This could be up to 1 million sats, courtesy of my friends over at the Bitcoin Well. You could go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle and you could sign up today. Using that, you could potentially win 500 Wishing Well tokens. Now, you can win 1 million sats every time you play this. So you will get 500, then you'll get 500 for buying Bitcoin your first time. You set up those recurring buys, the psychopaths over there want to give you more Bitcoin. And you could do that directly to cold storage, as the Bitcoin Well is strictly non-custodial. And that's what I like about them. You don't have to worry about any counterparty risk like you do with Coinbase. So now let's flip the coin down there. And we are giving you 707 sats. There's more and more sats coming in from the Bitcoin Well on a daily basis. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button with the bell notification so you know when I'm going live, and you guys can get sats every single day that I am doing this, right? So, but if not, if you missed this, you could go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. You could sign up by entering your email, or you could scroll on down and go to their infinite. If you guys are big bag holders, you got 50K or more looking to smash by, book a call right here. Do it today, because I don't think we're going to see Bitcoin. Once we pass that 100K mark, I think this might be the last time we see Bitcoin under 100K. And don't forget, folks, if you need to store your Bitcoin in self-custody, which everybody does, if you need a new hardware device, go to bitbox.swiss/greencandle. You can go here, buy now, get the Bitcoin only edition, and you can scroll on down, get the Steel Wallet or the Steel Wallet Pro with the hammer. You could get your all you need. The one-stop shop for self-custody is here at Bitbox. You can use promo code GreenCandle for 5% off. And you need to do it quickly, because Coinbase, whether or not they're buying up this paper Bitcoin or not, they are going to continue to be pushing their constituents, pushing their users to keep buying Bitcoin. So the amount of Coinbase users The amount of Bitcoiners that are on Coinbase, honestly, they need to get off. But I found something here the other day, and it just made me think of what we are doing. And I found a great distribution about how many Bitcoin would be in every single person's portfolio if the Coinbase users strictly just held Bitcoin. And it was this great report from River. Here we go. I found it. So this is as of June of 2023, right? So they have 500K Bitcoin in Coinbase Pro. But if every user was 100% in Bitcoin back in June of 2023, that would only be 0.082 Bitcoin. Even if they were just 50%, it would be just 0.041. So 4 million sats or 8 million sats, right? So Coinbase is not even close to having them all in on Bitcoin. And like I said, they don't publish these numbers for everybody to see. But the best that I could find, if anybody can find any better numbers, the best that I could find was this right here. About a third of their trading volume is in Bitcoin. Right? So I think that number is going to continue to increase. And all these guys saying, isn't Bitcoin ETFs just counterfeiting? Exactly. Look, sub 100 Bitcoin would be like a fart in the breeze soon. Don't say that too loud, McLovin. I got my dog sleeping in the corner, and he has been just ripping it lately. I gave him a couple treats today, and who knows, man? My man Max over there is just, whew. I need to get some air fresheners in here. Benny Hanna in the chat said, get your coins, if we can even call that, off of Coinbase. You need to quickly, right? VTC Gothic says, I think Sailor also uses Anchorage as one of Strategy's 3 custodians. I believe maybe you're right. At this point, I thought it was just Fidelity and Coinbase, but you could be right there, VTC Gothic. Or no, VT Gothic. Excuse me. Adding an extra C in there. But that's beside the point, right? We're seeing Coinbase potentially go all in because on their commercial, they're strictly just mentioning Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. Look how far off they are on this, right? They have 500K Bitcoin on there. Coinbase, let's see. Coinbase and other companies holding Bitcoin is very low, right? We have MicroStrategy with obviously the most here. But Coinbase, they got in. They were the first exchange in 2012. Imagine if they went all in on Bitcoin at that time. They would be absolutely smoking MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy B. But instead, they only have 6,885 coins on their balance sheet. If Coinbase was just smart and actually going all in on Bitcoin early and often, they would be crushing all these guys. It wouldn't even be close. Baldylocks, what are you doing here, folks? I think Brian Armstrong has learned his lesson, to be honest with you. And I think that's why they're starting to go. I mean, look at the smirk of this guy. What do we got going on here? Like, come on, man. What are we doing here? But either way, regardless, Brian Armstrong, I think he's learning that he should have gone all in on Bitcoin for a while, right? And he's met with Trump. He's met with the presidents. They've seen all these lobbying going on. They've seen the XRP bros, the Ether bros, all of these crypto exchanges now start to try to lobby with a bunch of money. And they realize it's a never-ending game, right? Essentially, all these XRP guys, they need to keep paying more and more marketing dollars in order to potentially have the United States come in, bail their ass out, and essentially pump their coins, right? I mean, it's going to be a long-winded game, and they're going to need to have money keep on coming in. And eventually that marketing dollars are going to run out, right? What does Bitcoin have? Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing department. Bitcoin strictly has, just us psychopaths. It has people like me blowing hot air into this microphone right here, telling you guys to get more and more Bitcoin. And all 230 plus of you here in the chat watching along, all saying, hey, we need to get more and more Bitcoin. Right? So I think Brian Armstrong is smart enough to start to see this. I think the United States government is smart enough to start to see this. And I think the writing on the wall is for Coinbase. You know, like I've said, when there's smoke, there's fire. I would worry about having your Bitcoin on Coinbase. I would try to get it off. Beachy is saying, I'm concerned the paper ETF are just going to be a saddle ETF, saddle BTC price like it did silver and gold the last 50 years. Hey, but to be honest, that would make the hard asset of actually physically holding Bitcoin even more valuable, right? I mean, you could only trust them so much. And McLovin saying, I bet we can collectively have more BTC than Coinbase. Hey, I lost all of mine in a boating accident. I don't know. What is this Bitcoins thing you guys are talking about here in this chat? I have no idea. But Bitcoin, Bitcoin only. That's all we need to do, right? We need to keep doing all of that. All right, folks. I appreciate all 240 plus of you coming into this chat. Smoke the like Cheech and Chong. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notifications because I give away free sats every single time you guys come to these live streams. So be sure to do that. And I will see you guys all at the next one. Actually, I got a surprise for you guys. For those of you who are interested in hanging out with me more and more, I'm going to put in, I've dropped some vlogs here from me traveling around, going from place to place. So if you guys would like to check out my experiences hanging out at all these different Bitcoin conferences, check them out here. Go to the YouTube channel, keys_open_doors. You could also find me on IG there. All right, folks. Appreciate you guys all coming onto the show, and I'll see you guys all at the next one.